Hello and good morning, I'm Lachlan, and today we're going to be creating this procedural wood material in Blender. Now I make a fair few product models, and I recently used this on a project. I made this turntable vinyl player, and I thought I would share with you guys some material that I made for this one. So let's jump into Blender and get underway. So, in our pretty fresh Blender scene, I've just got here a big subdivided icosphere, so you can just go like Shift A, one of these guys, make it nice and round. And then I've also just got for our lighting scenario, I've just got ourselves a big old area light, really nice and big, and just set to 1500, just so it's nice and easy to see what we're working with. It's probably not the best for scene lighting, like when you're doing a real shot, but just so we can see what we're doing here. And then also I've got in the Artist Workshop HDRI, and that's from Polyhaven, and I'll link it down below, and that's going to help us fill in all the shadows. So with all that lighting out of the way, let's get underway into our shading tab. So, with our ball selected, we are going to add a new material. We can call this guy wood. And also, we will be using, for this one, we'll be using cycles. Now, this does work in Eevee, but cycles, you get those better shadows, so that's what we're going to be rolling with. So, with our new material selected, essentially how this is going to run is you sort of have four sections to this wood, right? We have the color, we're then going to have the main grain, I guess the main pattern of the wood. We're then going to have some extra little knots and sort of imperfections on it, and then we're going to have sort of like the smaller detail scratches running down that as well. So, first of all, let's get our main sort of pattern done. Let's get the big grain done. So for the grain, we're going to go Shift A and add ourselves a Musgrave texture. And then we're going to go Shift A and also add ourselves a noise texture. Beautiful. Now we can get started on this Musgrave texture. So to preview it, you can hold Control and Shift and then just click on it and you can see what we're working with. So for the scale on our Musgrave texture, it's 4.6. And for our detail, cranking it all the way up, you can just drag this up all the way to 15. Now our dimension, we're going to bring all the way to 0, and that's going to start to really give us that nice sort of grainy detail we're after, and that's pretty good. That's it for the Musgrave texture. Now we can start working on our noise texture. So I'm just going to Control Shift and click on this guy. Now we're going to get the scale up a little bit to a 7.8. Up or down, I never know what to say. Like lower number makes it bigger, so is it bringing it up? I don't know. Whatever. I'm going to say bring it up because the number's higher. 7.8. Detail up to an 11, so as you can sort of see, it's getting a bit more detail in here. Leave the roughness, but then our distortion, we're going to set to a 1.12. And as you can sort of see, it sort of makes that like rippling effect. So if I Control Z, there we go. So that's going to sort of help us with our knots a little bit. Beautiful. So what else we need for this guy, for this knot section, is we're going to need a Mix RGB. So Shift A, Mix RGB, and we're actually going to need two of them. So what you can do is with it like hovering over it, you can press Shift D and that will duplicate them. I'm just going to move these guys a little bit over this way. And then on our mix shader, we need to get all our mapping and stuff. So with the Node Wrangler add-on, if you don't have that selected, if you go to your preferences, you can search up for the Node Wrangler add-on. And that means we can hit Control T. And I have no idea why it's given me an image texture with that guy, but delete him. And we just need to plug our mapping and our coordinates up. So, with this one, my goal was to really use this object coordinate for pretty much all the textures. So, no matter what you put this on, it should look great. And you can just sort of change the scale with it. So object for that one into the mapping. And then we are going to need, not into the factor for this one, we need our mapping into our color 1. And we need to plug the color from our first mix into the vector of the noise texture. And then we're going to need to plug our noise texture into our Musgrave and then also into our color 2, if you can see that. So it's into the color 2 of this mix, and our Musgrave will go into color 1. Hope we're all following. So noise is in the vector of the Musgrave and into the color 2 of that last mix. Perfect. So with our mapping node, this is where we're sort of going to warp it to give us that like the wood effect. Because currently it's really even, you know what I mean? It's like circle, circle, circle. We need to sort of stretch it out a little bit. So to do that, we're going to be using the scale here. So for our x-axis, I literally made this a little bit bigger at 10.8. But then for our y and z axis, select them both and make that a 0.15. And here we go. Now you can sort of see what we're working with, right? And then let's say as well, you want your wood to go horizontally on your object, kind of it's running sort of vertically, you can literally just sort of change these guys around, and that will have it run that way. Sorry, I'm just being a goose. Across your Z, so you'd have that like that, and then 0.15, and that's how you get it to go that way. Cool. I was going to get rid of all of that. Perfect. So, with our mix shader, we're going to move the factor across because it's going to sort of help us blend between our sort of nothingness and then our shaders. So as you can see, it's like full of the noise, and then it's the full gray. And then this is where I'm not too technical with this, but the blacker it is, sort of like the stronger the effect, and like it sort of whatever. I'm not too sure. But anyway, this is just set to BF. Jeez, I'm glad I know what I'm talking about. So to set that to that guy, and our factor for this one is going to be a 0.2. So it's going to be the nicest blend between like heaps of the texture and then just nice and the plain sort of color. Then with our second mix shader, we're going to set this guy to a 0.85. And you'll sort of see this is what's going to help us when we blend with the colors. So I'll set that to 0.85 and you'll see how we can use that in a little bit later. So now that we've got all that, that's sort of the main grain bit. So if we want to be little good people right now, you can go Shift A and add yourselves a frame. Grab all these guys, chuck them in the frame, and then on your little side panel, or you can press N. Just with this frame selected, we can just call this main grain. And that's going to be the main grain. Perfecto. Now we can start adding the color, so we can sort of see properly what this is doing. So I'm just going to move this guy over a little bit so we can see a bit better. Now, for our color, guess what we're going to add? A color ramp. No way. Who would have thought? Shift A, color ramp, and then we're also going to need another mix RGB. And we're going to use this one a little bit later, but for now, we're just going to set it to multiply. So don't worry too much about this guy. He's going to become apparent a little bit later when we start adding the other details. But let's jump into our color ramp here. So what I'll do so we can see what we're doing, I'm going to plug the mix from our main grain just into here and just into here, just so we can see what we're doing. And now you can sort of see how this is going to all work. So for our color ramp, we need 2 more color little droppies here to get a nice sort of color fade. So plus, and we can get started. So for the first color, the black on the left here, the hex code is going to be 331E12. Beautiful, and that's all the way to the left. And also, by the way, you can change these colors later, maybe make it a nice darker walnut. I'm just showing what you guys did, but then feel free to change this as much as you like. Get some really good results with some like deeper tones as well. But for the next color, our hex code is going to be 321E12. And then for the position of this guy, it's going to be set to a 0.18185. Like that. Beautiful. Now for our third dude, our hex code is going to be 7F562E. Hit enter. Oh yeah, now we're looking good. And this is the position is set to a 0.565. And last but not least, our fourth color, our hex code is going to be C49165. Perfecto, and there we go. We pretty much got your wood here, and this one's position is all the way to the end. So literally, if you wanted to, you can pretty much call it a day. We've already got a really nice sort of knotty wood texture going on here, but we're going to get a little bit more creative and add a little bit more going on. So I'm just going to move all these guys, and now we're going to get starting, add some little sort of like knots and imperfections to it. So for the knots, we're going to go Shift A and add ourselves a Musgrave texture. Zoom in here. And then we're also going to go Shift A and add ourselves a wave texture. Where are we? Beautiful. Good down. Perfecto. Now we can start doing our Musgrave texture first for these little knots. So Control Shift click on a Musgrave so we can preview what we're doing. We're going to set the detail all the way up to detail all the way up to 15. Let's put that back, whatever. Dimension is now going to go down to a 0.26. So here we go, getting some nice effect here. And then our the bottom one is going to be a 2.4. Perfecto. So we're going to be using this wave texture to affect the scale of this guy. So we can plug our wave texture into the scale. And as you can sort of see, it's going to stretch it down a little bit for us. And with the Control Shift click on our wave texture, so we can see what we're working with, we're going to set the scale of our wave texture to a 0.7. Distortion, we're going to go all the way up to a 4.5. 0.5, so that's going to sort of drag it down and sort of make it a bit swirly. Our detail, however, goes down to 1.14. The scale up to a 5 for that guy, so looking good so far. And then our roughness, we keep it 0.5 and we leave our phase offset. So we're going to need our coordinates again. So you could, if you wanted to, come off this one here, but I sort of like to keep it all nice and clean. So I'm going to, on our wave texture, hit Control T to bring up this guy. We don't need our mapping node right now, so we can get rid of him. And we're going to plug. Now I really wish I could have used the object for this one, but it just didn't really it just didn't work as well. It still sort of does, but it looks so much better with the UV plugged in. It still worked on most models for me. You can play around with trying to get it to work on your object, but I just preferred this effect of the UV. I'll show it a bit better later when we have the sort of colors on it. But UV for that one. And then we're going to need a color ramp to help us control these two textures here. So Shift A, search ourselves a color ramp. We can plug it into here. Now, if we click on this guy, what we need to do is we actually go into Control Shift click, there we go. We need to flip our color ramp because we're going to be using this multiply here, and that works with our dark factors. So we need to, all the black is what we're going to see. So we need to swap these guys over like that. So this black is what's going to show through on the texture, but we also don't need it that strong. So what you can do is we can just bring up the color of this black, make it a bit lighter. So for this, I used A6, A6, A6. But obviously feel free to play around with this guy as well. So now that we've got these guys sort of all done, we're going to add another frame in. So Shift A, add ourselves a frame, grab them, and then on our little panel with that selected, we can just name this, I guess, like knots/imperfections. That's probably spelled wrong, but who cares? So that's all that one. We can move these guys a bit closer together. And now we can sort of plug these guys all in. So with our color, we can plug this into the color 1 from our knots and imperfections. And then we need our main grain. That's going to go into color 2. And then we need to plug our color from the multiply into our color ramp. And now you can sort of see what's going on a little bit more here. So with our multiply, we need to set this to a 0.8. And this guy sort of controls how much of like just that texture we're seeing, or how much of just the grain. So you have lots of freedom. You can have it quite a soft wood with bigger imperfections, or vice versa. And then same, like if you want, let's say we set it there. If you want your little imperfections to be a bit stronger, you can just make it blacker, and there we go. If you want them softer, you can make them, it's probably, you can't really see them, you can make them whiter. Hope we are all following along. So set that back to A6, A6. And then this one, yeah, to 0.8. That's what I was happy with that one. So we're already looking really, really good. I'm just going to add a little bit more detail, sort of the finer little streaks within the wood. Beautiful. So for our smaller sort of little scratches, I'll zoom in so we can see a bit better. Come up here and we're going to Shift A, add ourselves another Musgrave texture. And we're going to need the mapping and stuff for this one as well. So with it selected, Control T, it's going to hide our panel. Beautiful. And then we're going to need our object coordinate into our mapping node, and we can start playing with our Musgrave. So I'm going to Control Shift click on that so we can see what we're doing. Now for this guy, scale 15, detail 15, and then our Lacusaran, whatever the hell the thing's called, 2.5. Beautiful. And now we're going to chuck in a color ramp so we can control it a bit better. So Shift A, add ourselves a color ramp, and chuck it into there. We can Control Shift click on this guy so we can see what we're doing with. So, what we need to do before actually we play with our color ramp is obviously this doesn't look like scratches at all. We need to sort of compress it to make it look like scratches. So coming over to our mapping node, on our x-axis here, pump it all the way to 120. And you can sort of see now it's sort of compressing that texture, and that's going to give us our nice little scratches. So chuck it all the way up there. And you can as well then want to play, you can play with your Y factor as well to make the sort of scratches like it's like shorter and taller. So I'm pretty sure I had mine to, I think it was like just like a 0.8, so a little bit longer. And we're looking pretty good here. Now, because sort of same as before, how we did with this guy, how we're going to use the black. We need to flip this color ramp as well. So I'm just going to grab these guys, swap them over, and here we go. So now you can see that these little black bits are going to be our scratches. Now we want to sort of make it a bit more defined. So to do that, we can bring in our color ramp. Now I set this one to a 0.125 for the white. And then I'm going to bring my black in and see how we can sort of, you're starting to see a bit more, it's a bit more like obvious, a bit more defined. I was going to bring this guy all the way to, I'm pretty sure at a 0.4. So as you can see, it's a lot more easy to see than it is. That's a bit too soft. So 0.4. We're nearly there, guys. We're nearly there. We can be good. Add ourselves another frame. Shift A. Grab these guys. Pop them in there. Click on the frame. Panel, just rinse and repeat. And this would just be called, I guess, like scratches. For now, we can move him over here. We're looking good. We're nearly there. Move this guy. Move this guy. Now, obviously, we need to essentially do the exact same thing that we did with this one, with these two. We need to add another multiply node. So what I can do is just click on the multiply node, press Shift D, grab that to put him over there. And then I'm just going to move over so I can see a bit easier what to do. Hide that panel. We're going to then plug these guys up. So we need the color ramp to actually come into color 1. So click on this, come into color 1, and that will come down into color 2. And then you can use this as well to then control how much of your scratches are coming in. So 0 is none. 1's full. I have mine at pretty sure it's a 0.5. Pretty sure I just kept it at 0.5. So a nice little amount. You can sort of see this adds that little bit more subtle detailing along it, just to make it a little bit more realistic. I guess as realistic as you can make it. It's one of those hard things with like image textures versus procedural. Like you want it to look as realistic as possible while doing it procedurally, but it can be difficult. So sort of there we go. We're sort of like, we're getting near the finish line. We just need to plug this guy into our base color. We can preview our principle, and you can see just have those nice streaks all through it. We're nearly done. Look at that. I'm pretty happy with this so far. Look at this. Now we just want to add a little bit of bump to it, give it a bit more texture, as it does look like a very sort of smooth, flat piece of wood right now. So I'm going to move these out the way, and I'm going to add myself in 2 bump nodes. So I'm going to go Shift A and add ourselves a bump. And I'm just going to press Shift D and just duplicate that, because we're going to have one bump for the knots and grain, and then we're going to have another one for all of our little scratches. So that's why we're going to be chucking in 2. So pretty simple. We just need to chuck the color ramp for all our knots and stuff. That's going to go into the height of this first bump. And then what we can do is we need the color from our scratches. So that's going to come, and that's going to come into the height of the second one. Stretch it down. We can plug the normal from the first one into the normal, and then the normal into the principal BSDF. And there you go. I can sort of see all those shadows coming through. Now we don't need it to be anywhere near as strong. So I'm just going to Control Shift click on the first bump. So you can see it's very, very, very bumpy. I'm going to change down the strength of the knot one to 0.2. So it's still there, but just not as harsh. And then also with our scratches, these are quite aggressive. So I'm gonna turn these all the way down to a 0.1. So it's just subtle, but you can see it coming through that wood. Look at that. And we are we're done. We are done. We can pretty much call it a day. You can move this all around and clean it up if you like. You know, move that over there, move this over here, move them a bit closer. And that is going to be it. So I'm going to jump over to here. I'm going to give this guy a little render. And bam, there we have it, guys. So here is my procedural wood material in Blender. This was my first sort of material tutorial. I'm so sorry. I was looking at my phone heaps, had all the numbers on it. But I really hope you enjoyed this guy. I really want to see the work that you guys put this on and sort of what you can create with this. But I really hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to like and subscribe. It's really going to help me out. And I will see you soon for some more designing. And yeah, happy designing, guys. Cheers.